Hi, everyone. I'm just going to um, talk again a little bit and just say hi. My name is Shannon, and I'm actually with MFNERC as well as David, and I'm the career development facilitator with the organization, and have been a part of this very quick committee to get this virtual career fair up and running. And so excited to have you be a part of this. We have David Robertson from MFNERC. He is part of publishing, and he's had quite a different role in the last little while as we go online. I think it's been a bit of a challenge and a lot of fun for David. He's also an author, a published author, and he's going to tell you about his career journey. We'll maybe get started, and then if feel free, whoever wants to ask some questions. He's pretty open today to however best will serve the attendees. Would that be correct, David?
I am. Yep,
okay.
That's correct.
So I'm going to mute myself, and I'll let you give more of your background and share your career journey.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Robertson, and I'm glad to be joining you. Talk a little bit about my career path and what I do now at MFNERC. So it's an interesting path because it's not a typical one. And I mean, I think it's the convergence of two things. So I'll kind of talk about those two things, I guess. So the one thing is writing and my experience in the publishing industry. And the other is involvement in Indigenous employment and education in my professional career. Not my writing's professional career too, but in my day job, I guess, as you would call it. So so that's kind of what I'll talk about for about 20 minutes, and then if anybody has any questions, you can definitely ask them. And I'd be pleased to answer those questions for you. A little bit about myself. I have 5 kids. I live in Winnipeg here. We've been working from home now since mid-March, so we're excited kind of to get back into the office in June, around mid-June, and at least for a little bit, and to see kind of what life looks like out of the house. And also Shannon's right. Like we've had a kind of exciting, busy time in how our job has shifted and how our work has shifted with this pandemic, and moving a lot of the things we do online, creating this online learning hub for the organization has kind of been interesting for us. So I might touch on that a little bit. But my dad was born and raised in Norway House Cree Nation. So I'm a band member with Norway House. My mom was born and raised in a small town in southwest Manitoba. So I'm Cree, English, Irish, and Scottish is my makeup. And I was my dad actually worked for MFNERC as the first executive director for a few years before he retired. So it's really nice to be working here for that reason. And I am the publishing and communications manager currently here. I manage a staff of about 10 people, and so I'll kind of tell you how I got there. So as a writer, I started writing when I was in grade 3, so a long time ago. It's something I've always done and something I've always wanted to do. And I've always said that when I was 8 years old to my mom, I want to be a writer when I grow up. And so it wasn't until I was a young adult in my early 20s where I decided that I wanted to also do something in Indigenous education. And so those two things kind of have linked together as my career has kind of gone on in both facets of my career as a writer and as someone involved in Indigenous employment and education. I was my first real experience in publishing came in 2001, where I decided that I was going to try and just self-publish a book. And it was actually a very good experience, even though I would not recommend you buy that book because it's not a very good book. But it was a good experience for me because I got to see kind of the other side of the publishing industry, and not just from the writer side, but from the publisher side. And it's something I've been able to get a better experience in over the years, working closely with my first publisher, Highwater Press, that's a local publisher. Oh, sorry, can somebody just maybe mute their mic just because I'm hearing a lot of paper rustling? I think it's this Kathy. Sorry, welcome, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. So I got a lot of experience in how books are published, the background, just beyond just writing them, and that's a very important experience to have. So in self-publishing, I did the writing, I designed the book and laid it out. I gathered funds to print. I worked with different printers. I did all that kind of work and did some marketing, organized a book launch, and did all of that stuff for this first self-published book about 20 years ago. And that gave me a pretty good experience. And my first book that kind of people were aware of was called The Life of Helen Betty Osborne. And that came out in 2009, I believe. And we also self-published that book with the Helen Betty Osborne Memorial Foundation. And for that book as well, I did a lot of the work beyond just writing it. I didn't draw it, which is a good thing because I'm a terrible artist. But I did all the design, working with printers, all the same kind of thing. And so, and that led to my first professional book being published in 2010, which was the 7 Generations series. And I have extensive experience as a professional writer. I have about 25 books published with different publishers. So I have books published with Highwater Press, which is the local publisher. I have books coming out this year with HarperCollins and Penguin. With Highwater, I've been able to work with them very closely in a lot of my publications. So I've been able to see a lot of the back end work in how they're edited, designed, prepared for printing, printed, marketed, all that stuff. And so that was a really good experience for me because it gave me a sense of what to do and how to do it well as a publisher. And so I'll kind of backtrack to how I got involved in Indigenous education and how these kind of things linked up. So my dad, as a lot of you may have heard of my dad, Don Robertson. He's been involved in Indigenous education since the early 70s. And he was a big influence on me in what I wanted to do with my day job, with my career. I really wanted to get involved with the Indigenous community. I wasn't when I was a kid. And the more I learned a lot of this from my dad, the more I decided that I wanted to get involved in a way that would help communities and youth in our communities, get advantages and support that they weren't getting. And so I decided first to get involved in Indigenous employment. And the first job I got working with the Indigenous community was in a summer employment program in early 2000, maybe 2001, 2002. It was called the Aboriginal Workforce Orientation Initiative. And I worked on that for about 6 months. It was a summer program. I worked at the Royal Bank for a little bit. And that's only relevant to me because I got involved with the Royal Aboriginal Circle, which is the Indigenous employment group within the Royal Bank that offers support to each other and that sort of thing. And so, and finally, I got heavily involved in the last 11 to 12 years. The first thing I did of significance was working with the Information Communication Technology Association of Manitoba, which is the shortened TAM, so it's a Technology Association. And I was tasked to start up and run the Indigenous initiative of outreach and developing programming to support youth as they pursued careers in technology. And so it's really where my kind of work went from working with just employment into education, because I developed education programs for that initiative. So we developed a couple of post-secondary programs actually that are still running today with the University of Winnipeg and Red River College, and those were quite successful. I did a lot of work in budgeting, which is something I still kind of have to do in my day job today, is looking at budgeting and allocating budgets and that sort of thing. So I had a whole gamut. I ran that whole initiative. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then finally was hired to run a federal workforce development program out of the Workplace Education Manitoba, and that was called Connecting Aboriginal People to Manufacturing. And so that was again an employment program, but also required us to develop and start, design, implement a post-secondary training program, which we did with the University of Winnipeg and what's now, I guess, called Winnipeg. It's WIT now, but it used to be called something else. It's on the Scurfield and Kenniston in Winnipeg. Winnipeg Technical College. It's called something else now. So we worked with different communities. So I worked in communities, and I worked with 5 or 6 different First Nations communities. Fisher River was one, Peguis, Swan, I want to say Swan Lake, and Sagin First Nation. And what we did was we developed programs where we looked at the transition of Indigenous peoples from community to the urban locations. So offering support in the transition, which was very important, as apart from just training. So things like we went over things like how to take transit in the city, how to finance and budget your income, things like that. And we also had certified trained counselors on staff to work with students as they began to transition from the communities into cities. This post-secondary program was started out with training in the community, which was very important, and then eased into training in the city. And then at the end of this training program, which was about 6 months, the students then were placed into jobs within the manufacturing industry. And so it was a very successful program. And it had up to an 80 to 90% rate of completion of a graduation. And so some of those students that were involved in that program are still working in those jobs today, which was really great to see. And so from that job, I was approached by the executive director, outgoing executive director by MFNERC, Lauren Keeper, and they were starting up a publishing initiative. And of course, MFNERC previously because of my father. And so I was quite excited to work with them. And because they were starting a publishing initiative, I know it was obviously very exciting for me, because my goal with my writing was always to teach kids and adults, frankly, about Indigenous peoples, communities, cultures, languages through literature. And so I saw that as an extension of my writing work, what I could do in my day job. So I was very excited, and I applied I applied for the job, and ended up being hired for it. And so since 2015 or 14, I've been working with MFNERC as the publishing and communications manager. It's grown a lot since then. I was able to kind of build that initiative within MFNERC and start the publishing program. And our goal in the publishing area is to develop resources for schools and kids in the areas of and so we're shifting now into focusing a lot on language development, support, revitalization. So doing a lot of literature upcoming for the 5 major languages in Manitoba, so Dakota, Ojibwe Cree, Dene. And so that's been great. So we've published probably, 20, 30, 40 different books in the publishing area. And we've also multimedia work. We do a lot of videos. You see on our Facebook. See a lot of video work we do. We also do a lot of work with other organizations, with the Diabetes Association for Indigenous People. And so it's been a great job, and it's allowed me, in one sense, connect with my father's, but also look at how we can use literature and publishing materials to support educators and schools and communities to enhance the educational experience of our kids, sure that they have access to quality education. So, and so the work itself is, for me on a daily basis, is, some of it's ensuring that the resources we have high quality standards in how we brand our work. We've developed a brand system within MFNRC, how we publish our books, in the videos we put out, PowerPoints we develop for templates, things like that. We make sure that everything looks great as much as it has good content. And working human resources, so dealing with staff issues, working with staff. I have 10 staff, so it's a smaller staff. But, it's making sure that we have that we work well together, we communicate with each other, have the same goal in mind, that we're here for the youth, we're here for the teachers, we're here for the communities. And it's been a really rewarding job to work in. And so I've been really pleased to be able to do what I do. And I appreciate the work that MFNRC does and my small part in that. So it's been a very atypical, career journey for me, because it's been kind of this slow kind of build towards what I do here at MFNRC. And it's looking at, my writing career and the stuff that I wanted to do through literature, and then the work that I wanted to do with my day job and working with Indigenous peoples in whatever capacity that I felt like I could contribute. And I don't have formal training in, for example, management. I've taken some courses in it, but a lot of it honestly is working with my dad, and my dad, he passed away in December, but I learned a lot from him, and he was a big mentor for me. And so a lot of my training is informal in that way. And so I do have a university degree in English and sociology. But really the most important experience for me has been lived experience. So, in working in the publishing area as a writer, and with good mentors, for example, with my dad, people like Lauren and Howard, who's my director. I ask them a lot of questions, learn a lot from them on how to manage people effectively and how to manage my work effectively and the work that we do. I feel very, very lucky to be in the position I'm in. But yeah, I don't have, I'd like to, in the future, work towards, a master's degree. But honestly, right now, my writing job is so busy that I don't have time to take a coursework in that way. My writing job is very busy as well. So, my holidays on my day job are usually there for me to work on my writing job. So I do a lot of traveling for my writing work. I go to different festivals across Canada and in North America. And whenever I'm there, I usually talk about MFNRC and the work that we do here. So they're kind of tied together in some senses. In other senses, they're different worlds. So it depends on the work that we do and what we're doing. But that's kind of a snapshot. That's probably about 20 minutes. But that's kind of my atypical journey towards where I am right now. So.
Thanks. I kind of jumped on a little bit too soon. Sorry about that, David.
That's okay.
For those of you that just joined us, I'm Shannon Leffler, or joined us after I turned off my mic and video. I'm just going to open it up to questions. I'm with MFNERC and part of the committee that brought the virtual career fair to you all. Thanks for joining. I just wanted to ask David just one question from my own self. So what did you find when you were first starting out was the most helpful when you were going to, you'd said you had been self-published. However, when you got to the point where you were looking for a publisher or looking for some support in breaking through into that industry with some of the publishers you talked about, like Highwater Press or HarperCollins and Penguin?
So yeah, that area has been again, like it's been a progression for me. Now, I would say that 20 years ago, I wasn't a very good writer. I was a skilled writer, but I wasn't a very good writer. There's two different things. So a lot of it was for me learning how to write better. And that came through reading a lot of work. And so developing my skills as a writer to be able to be ready to seek a publisher. But seeking a publisher, it's kind of different for every writer. I was approached by Highwater Press in order to develop more graphic novels after they had picked up The Life of Helmuth Osborne for distribution. And I still had to make, pitches for them for book ideas, which is what you do as a writer. So you usually with writing, you have a manuscript. So you have a manuscript, whether it's a novel or a picture book or a graphic novel, you have a manuscript. And you submit that manuscript to publishers who either have published work like that, who have editors who have worked with books like what you've written. And so there's things like the Writers Market of Canada, which will help you determine what publishers to submit work to. And then you usually have to submit samples of your work with query letters to publishers, and you send those off. And I've been rejected still. Like I still get rejected for short stories or poetry from time to time when I submit. So the rejection is a part of a writer's life. Stephen King famously was rejected almost 100 times before he had his first book published, which was Carrie. So that's kind of like how it happens, but you submit it, and then usually you have to wait 4 to 6 months to hear back from publishers on your work. And then if you're lucky enough to have written something very good, find the right editor, connect with the right publisher, then you work on the very hard work of editing your manuscript, and that's a ton of work. So I would say writing for me is about 10%, 15% of my time. Editing is probably going to be about 85%. It's very difficult work. It's not fun, but it's definitely part of the job. And recognizing that for my day job is important too, because we have 2 editors we work with that work with other people to make sure that that the stuff we sent out is free of errors, typos, but also is using effective language, concise language, clear language, things like that. So yeah, so that's kind of like I work with an agent now, so it's also different for me. So my agent will approach publishers for me and usually set up meetings with them, and I'll pitch ideas to them, and I'll often now get book contracts before writing books. But that, it takes a while to get to that point. Like I've been in the writing industry now, publishing industry for 11, 12 years, and I've been pretty successful. And so in the last, winning the Governor General's helped about 4 years ago. But yeah, so now I'm able to go at it differently than a newer writer would. But I'm a pretty established writer in Canada now, which I'm very lucky to be. But a newer writer is exciting. Like the whole work of the passion of writing something you believe in, and then the perseverance of finding the right publisher, because sometimes you do have to submit your work 15, 20, 25 times before you find the right person to publish your work. And so that's part of the job, right? And you have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to take criticism and feedback, and you have to be able to do a ton of work, because it is very hard to be a professional writer, for sure.
So I'm just going to check to see. Thank you very much for that. That was that was good information, because I think often we just think we're going to do it and we're going to get published and everything's going to flow smoothly. And knowing that it takes perseverance is helpful.
And I think too, I think it just before I finish off, just to finish that thought, I think it takes also more than skill. Like I think I'm a very skilled writer, but a lot of great writers are less skilled, but they're better writers. So I mean, it's like learning how to tell a story is as important or more important than the skill you have to do it, because you can develop skills. Like I have kind of a natural skill for it, I believe, but you can develop skills. And if you learn how to tell a story properly in the different forms in which you're writing, that's a very important thing to do. And that's why I wasn't successful for many years, because I wasn't doing the right things to learn how to write properly. And you can write very beautiful sentences, but if those sentences don't come together to tell a good story, then it's not really going to work for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to open it up to questions from everyone else. And V, I'll let you take over. I'm going to jump over to the other meeting. I need to introduce someone else from FNERC. So thank you very much, David. And if there's anyone out there that has a question, please feel free to ask that of David.